Good morning, world, and welcome to the Patriot Party Show. I'm Matt, your host, and I'm so happy to be here starting off the weekend with all y'all guys and gals. At the Patriot Party, where truth meets every corner of the news, we bring you unbiased news that spans general news, political news, world news, financial news, tech news, and more. We cover celebrity news, gossip, sports, movies, and TV shows, making sure you stay up to date with all the latest entertainment. Join our America First movement where we put truth and the Constitution above all and provide unique insights and immersive content all in one place. We have a new Patriot Party store where you can purchase our custom graphic design merchandise. Please check us out and support our cause. Also, follow us on all our social media platforms to stay engaged. You can find links by clicking on the description of this podcast. And don't hesitate to share your thoughts or topic suggestions. Thank you for supporting the Patriot Party as we unravel mainstream media BS, and BS it is, a lot of it, and offer you a fresh perspective that's not affiliated with any political parties. So we have no agendas. Thank you so much for your support, because without y'all, we wouldn't be here. And now to the show. Good morning to everyone. It's been an eventful week. Not a really great week for Trump. A lot of stuff is unraveling. A lot of things we've talked about in this show for the last several months is starting to come to pass. So we're going to dig right in, get into it, but we have spoken and voiced concerns about a lot of this stuff that's starting to unravel. This first story, I don't think this is good. We talked about it about a month or so ago. Chinese leader Xi Jinping has welcomed a large group of foreign dignitaries to China for meetings that he hopes will unite regional powers in their shared grievances with the U.S.-led global order and the policies of President Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin of Russia, Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus, and I'm sure I butchered that name, and India's Narendra Modi, and I'm sure I got that one. You all know how I am with names, are among 20 foreign leaders attending the two-day Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, which begins Sunday in this port city, Tianjin, China, 90 miles southeast of Beijing. The forum is a key part of China's campaign to be seen as a reliable partner and a counterweight to U.S. unpredictability in an increasingly multipolar world. Modi's attendance, in particular, his first visit to the country in 7 years, is a milestone in Beijing's attempt to mend ties with an influential U.S. partner that has been alienated by Trump's tariffs. We have spoken many times about Trump making deals and changing deals and how he keeps on moving the goalpost and is unreliable. This is exactly what I was worried about. Pushing people, starting some of our allies, into our adversaries' arms because we are treating our allies adversarial. We've talked about this. Now it seems to be coming to pass. We'll have to see what Trump does. I mean, heck, they got Russia coming over and they're celebrating, trying to undermine the U.S., but yet India's the one just for importing oil, which we were doing through subsidiaries. We had a loophole to do it. I don't know if we still are. They said they were trying to close it up, where we were getting Russian oil. We weren't getting it straight from Russia. We were getting it from people who got it from Russia. It was what they called the loophole. But we punish India, a sovereign nation, because they want to buy oil, and this war doesn't pertain to us. This has nothing to do to us, but oil does. So we're going to buy it. And we're going to buy it from who we so choose. But we punish them and push them into the arms of China, who is not getting punished nearly as bad because of all the money flowing out of China, because China is making us lots of money. I think that's what Trump said when he went against his own national security protocol, which he called out Chinese students. We reported on it last week and said they were they could be here for espionage. They could be here to steal intellectual property, but yet he's letting 600,000 come in and saying, well, we're making a lot of money with China. It just seems like the national security we talked about last week is up for grabs to the highest bidder. But now they spit in our face, and our adversaries are being pushed in their arms, as we said a month or more ago. Maybe more ago. It might have been more than a month ago. You know, time flies these days. I didn't believe my grandmother when she said the older you get, the faster time goes. Well, I believe her now. So let's get back to the story. For now, it's 26 countries. So up here, it was 20. Now it's 26. And then I believe the group will grow. They are primarily united in a sense of agreement with the U.S. rather than a sense of common purpose, said Carla Freeman, director of the Foreign Policy Institute at Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. These are big countries with their own agendas. In his opening speech Monday, Xi Jinping implicitly criticized Trump's policies without naming him or mentioning the United States, as he urged the assembled countries to find common ground and oppose leadership and power politics. Xi Jinping also proposed deepening economic ties to take advantage of the group's mega-sized market, including by establishing an SCO development bank. China has already invested $84 billion in member countries and will provide another $1.4 billion in loans over the next 3 years, he said. But the ceremonies are as much about optics as about deals. Many of the dignitaries will stay on for a huge military parade in Beijing this week to mark the 80th anniversary of victory in World War II. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, despite not attending the the group in Taiwan or Tianjin, China, he will be there and is expected to join Putin and Xi on a rostrum overlooking Tiananmen Square for Wednesday's parade. And then the parade. Beijing, China flexed its growing military power and its deepening ties to Washington's adversaries with an extravagant parade that cast leader Xi Jinping as the standard bearer of a new global order, flanked by leaders from 26 countries, not 20, including Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Now, y'all can go way back. We've been talking for a year about Iran, Russia, North Korea, and China. And the only one that has not signed what we call on this show the adversarial NATO, attack one, you attack all, is Iran. And I've been waiting for a year for Iran to be on that list. I don't think it'll be too long, but we'll have to see. It's kind of funny that they're all there. And Xi oversaw a procession of advanced Chinese weaponry and thousands of troops marching in unison past Tiananmen Square on Wednesday. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, y'all, so don't laugh at me. In a display marking China's victory in World War II. The spectacle projected the vision of a great power that Xi wants to present to the world, and a warning to the US and Europe not to challenge it. Amplifying the anti-Western optics was the attendance of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russia's Vladimir Putin, who walked out to the attendance of who walked out to the viewing rostrum and watched the procession on either side of the Chinese leader. The Chinese people have made major contributions in saving human civilization and safeguarding world peace with huge national sacrifices, Xi said in a speech he delivered from Tiananmen The gate of heavenly peace which overlooks the square, the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is unstoppable. And that's in quotations. That is a bold and ominous statement. I mean, it's kind of like the pot calling the kettle when he's up there talking about safeguarding world peace and human civilization, but yet they imprisoned like millions of people. Gosh, I'm trying to remember their name. I reported on them like a year ago. It's like on the tip of my tongue. I can't recall it right this second, but it is kind of a funny short name. Not funny as in haha, but I can't remember the Uyghur. Maybe it's the Uyghur. Trying to remember, but anyway, the Chinese and human rights and all that stuff don't even really go together as far as I'm concerned. But this is what we've been talking about. We've been talking about it for months. And actually, with the Iran, North Korea, Russia, China, we've been talking about that for a year. We'll just have to see. But I don't think I think that the haphazard way that we are dealing with global economics is pushing people into China's arms. We call this is starting to happen, especially with India. We'll see what happens. Trump's got a tough September ahead of him. He's got a tough September. And it started out real tough. We'll get to it later in the show, but let's go through this article and then we will move on. So, President Trump faces a challenging September at home and abroad. An end-of-month deadline will force the president to negotiate with Congress to avoid a government shutdown. While Republicans control the House and Senate, they will need Democratic votes to do so. Trump's recent clawback of billions in foreign aid without congressional approval has brewed distrust between lawmakers and the administration. Trump gave the leader of Russia and Ukraine an early September deadline to move forward with a peace process or face possible U.S. retaliation. Progress has stalled since the president's closely watched meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska last month, dimming optimism that an end to the war is in sight. Beyond deal-making, Trump faces uncertainty about the legality of his tariffs, the main plank of his economic agenda, and a key campaign promise. His authority to take over the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington expires this month, and he is looking at deploying the National Guard to more cities across the country to address crime. The administration's contentious changes to public health guidelines are expected to face fresh scrutiny in the coming week. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Thursday is scheduled to testify before the Senate Finance Committee after the abrupt firing of the head of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which unleashed turmoil inside the agency. Kennedy's much anticipated report recommending how to make America healthy again, which he said would outline the cause of autism, is expected soon. So this article came out, and then literally the dominoes fell. A snowball of stuff, rulings, legal, all sorts of stuff came out this week that really, really has put a kink in Trump's plan. Whatever it is, I try to make sense of it. People say he's playing 4D chess. I say he's not even on the chessboard. But whatever his plan may be, there's a lot of kinks that unveiled themselves this week, similar to this article, and they just started coming. So let's get right into them. First, a federal judge ruled Tuesday that the Trump administration deployment of U.S. military troops to Los Angeles during immigration raids earlier this year was illegal. A federal judge in San Francisco barred soldiers from aiding immigration arrests and other civilian law enforcement in Southern California Tuesday, warning of a growing now, this is in quotations. This is in quotations, y'all. I want you to pay close attention because I know all this is for a lot of the fan base is the feel-good stuff. But this is in quotations, and this kind of speaks directly to what we have talked about with constitutional violations and how it's such a slippery slope. A national police force with the president as its chief in an impassioned order set to take effect September 12th. In a 52-page decision early Tuesday morning, Senior District Judge Charles R. Brewer barred the administration from deploying, ordering, instructing, training, or using California troops to engage in civilian law enforcement, a ruling that could have wide-ranging consequences for the use of the military nationally. But bam, I didn't like it. I said, it's all feel good, it's all good until it's not. And when we reported on it with all the, in Chicago, in different places in California they were talking about, in New York City, we said, our one, I don't believe it's constitutional, but two, look at the shoe on the other foot. What would Republicans have done if Democrats did this in Republican-run cities because they didn't like the way it was being run? Think about it. Oh, you're violating the Constitution. You're violating the Constitution. But yet when it's them, they don't want to hear it. Now, there's no love laws for the Democrats who are putting out complaints about violating the Constitution because they don't want to talk about it when they're in power, but yet when they're not, they want to talk about it. I want to talk about it no matter who's in power. That is our guiding light. That is our moral compass. That is our bedrock. That is what we have to base legislation and policies off of to get the reset this country needs. And we do need somewhat of a reset. Then comes an article. A federal court ruled Tuesday that President Donald Trump unlawfully invoked, we have called this, gosh, we have been calling it, invoked a centuries-old wartime act to swiftly deport Venezuelan migrants, blocking one of his administration's most contentious immigration initiatives and teeing up a legal battle sure to end up before the Supreme Court. A divided three-judge panel of the New Orleans-based U.S. Court of Appeals. And guys, and gals, I'm in Louisiana, so this was not, a few hours away. For the Fifth Circuit, rejected Trump's use of the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to remove alleged members of the Venezuela-based Tren de Aragua gang, concluding that their presence in the country did not amount to the type of invasion, or predatory incursion lawmakers envisioned when they drafted the statute allowing fast-tracked deportations. The 2-1 decision from the panel, made up of judges from one of the nation's most conservative appellate courts, follows a string of similar rulings from lower courts across the country that have almost uniformly rejected Trump's invocation of the law on similar grounds. However, the case the Fifth Circuit decided on Tuesday is widely viewed as the one most likely to reach the Supreme Court first, and several other appellate courts had paused their consideration of similar cases while awaiting the circuit court's ruling. Writing for the majority, Judge Leslie H. Southwick said Trump's assertions that the Venezuelan government had encouraged Tren de Aragua members to immigrate to the United States illegally to traffic drugs and commit acts of violence did not amount to the type of military conflict that Congress envisioned when it drafted the law. The Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 times before during the War of 1812 and both world wars. A country encouraging its residents and citizens, now this is in quotation, to enter this country illegally is not the modern day equivalent of sending an armed, organized force to occupy, to disrupt, or to otherwise harm the United States, wrote Southwick, an appointee of President George W. Bush. He was joined in his opinion by Judge Irma Carrillo Ramirez, a Biden appointee. Dissenting Judge Andrew S. Olam criticized his colleagues for second-guessing the president. He argued that the ruling contravenes over 200 years of legal precedent and concluded that heads of state should be granted wide latitude to determine what justifies appropriate use of the law. first, let's go through this, and then we're going to kind of come back and dissect a little bit of that. So we have been talking about Trump's use of the wrong act for many months. He should have used the Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, put in place by Bill Clinton and used by him and Obama. But I have two issues, and we'll see what the Supreme Court says when this makes it to the Supreme Court, because it sure probably will make it to the Supreme Court. They're going to have to do the overall ruling. One issue is this another? This act seems very suspect. I haven't read the language of this act. A lot of these acts are super long. I haven't read the language, but anytime it's very suspect to me, and we've talked about this before, when judges are like, well, that's not what they meant. It makes me think that this act is very ambiguous, which in itself, in my mind, makes it unconstitutional, and it should be fixed or repealed. I'm so tired of the interpretations. You got one judge saying you should do this. You got one judge saying you should do this. Interpretations are subjective by nature, even if a judge is trying to do it unbiasedly. You got one judge who is obviously biased saying, well, they should be given a wide latitude. Well, not if that's not if that's not what the act or law intended that they are using. No, they shouldn't. They shouldn't be able to circumvent Congress. They shouldn't be able to circumvent the legislative branch. They shouldn't be able to ignore judicial rulings. These are all checks and balances that keep our country balanced and that make us different than any other country in the world. And this move towards dictatorship, authoritarianism, this is a move that is very sneaky. And it comes up on you, and then that's why I say it's okay until it's not. You don't realize it. It's very slippery slope. So in my mind, you've got this one act, or you got this act. This is not the first. We've talked about a couple over the last week or two. You got these acts that are ambiguous, and these judges, well, no, it means this. Well, no, it means this. Well, no, it means this. Well, freaking tell us what it means. Congress, legislative branch, tell us what it means. Stop writing these acts that can be, well, the conservative judges take them this way and the Democratic judges take them this way. No. If they uphold the Constitution within the act, then it will clear a lot of these court calendars and stopping up the judicial system with a bunch of interpretations that should never have to be interpreted. Harvard won a legal victory Wednesday when a federal judge ruled the Trump administration illegally canceled $2.2 billion in grants and huzzah for the rule of law, which is no small thing, but it might prove a Pyrrhic victory since President Trump seems willing to keep using and sometimes abusing government power to punish a school if it won't unconditionally surrender. The White House is waging a multi-front war against Harvard that has involved cutting off federal funding, banning foreign student enrollment, and threatening its tax-exempt status, and even its patents. Its patents. We talked about that a while ago. Mr. Trump's laudable aim is to clean up the anti-Semitic rot on campus, but its brass-knuckle tactics are doing damage to the rule of law and the First Amendment. That's essentially what Judge Allison Burroughs said in her 84-page opinion, which includes new details from legal discovery on how the administration leveraged federal funds to try to control Harvard's hiring, admissions, and curriculum. On April 3rd, the government sent Harvard a list of preconditions to continue receiving federal money. Harvard had a choice. The administration's euphemism for its ultimatum between installing new leadership in problematic departments and receivership. The government also sought a first lien on all Harvard assets as collateral in the event that Harvard failed to comply with its demands. Are you going to seize Harvard? I mean, you're gonna repossess Harvard? That's just silly, I think. A week later, the administration detailed further conditions the government told Harvard to do an external audit of viewpoint diversity in each department, field, or teaching unit to provide ill-defined balance. It demanded that the school hire a critical mass of new faculty and admit a critical mass of students. When Harvard refused, the administration froze the $2.2 billion in funds. We talked about this. There was a lot of stuff going on at Harvard that I didn't like, but they kind of rolled over in submission and said, we will work with your anti-Semitic task force. I think there was a task force that was going to come in, and then they just kept raising the bar. Well, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. I understand universities, these are impressionable minds that go there to learn. Politicization of universities should not be a thing. You should be able to believe your own thing, and as long as you don't push it on somebody else. So I understand if universities are pushing one ideology, political ideology, over another one. I understand that. But the way that it was gone about and the way that the universities kind of rolled over, same as our adversaries or allies with the tariffs, but we still went after them as adversaries. This is the same thing. And it's just, in my mind, it's not legal the way you are doing this. More than 1,000 current and former employees of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services wrote a letter to Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Wednesday, arguing that his leadership has put the health of all Americans at risk and demanding his resignation. The letter, which was also addressed to members of Congress, comes after a tumultuous week at the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention that saw its newly confirmed director, Dr. Susan Monterez, declared to be fired by the Trump administration, spurring the resignations of 4 other senior officials at the Public Health Agency. Monterez was ousted after refusing to bend to pressure from top HHS officials to sign off on potential new vaccine restrictions. According to people familiar with this matter, Secretary Kennedy continues to endanger the nation's health, the employees wrote in Wednesday's letter, citing actions including the facilitation of Monterez's firing, the resignations of key longtime CDC leadership, the appointment of what they called political ideologues to influential roles in vaccine policy, and the rescinding of emergency use authorizations for COVID-19 vaccines without, they said, providing the data or methods used to reach such a decision. Hundreds of current and former HHS staffers also wrote to Kennedy last month after the August 8th shooting at CDC headquarters that killed a police officer, imploring the secretary to stop spreading inaccurate health information and to guarantee the safety of HHS's workforce. I looked into it. Authorities did find vaccine misinformation on the man, or not on the man, but I believe at his home, that went up there and shot at the CDC headquarters. You get these crazies, and it's on both sides. You push misinformation, there's a lot of people that pick up on it, and they hold on to every word, and they misinterpret words, and it flips them out. And then they do, these mentally ill people, and they do bad things. Now, obviously, there's no way to stop, a mentally ill person, but you can stop putting out misinformation. We are tired of misinformation. I know that we needed an overhaul. I know that the FDA and the big pharma and the CDC and all, they're kind of entwined. But the thing that kind of threw me off, well, there's a few things that RFK Jr. has done. First, he goes in and he promised to, attack or to really not fix big pharma, but go in and try to fix a lot of things about the way big pharma pulled strings and did certain things. Well, the first thing he does is he goes after people eating not all junk food, just a small portion of junk food that are on government assistance. And, I'm like, well, it can't be about the junk food. It's about control, because even the sugar-free, because it's supposed to be about diabetes, candy bars and sodas, but even the sugar-free or diet or things that don't spike your insulin levels, they went after. and included it in the products in which these people that are getting assistance can't get. Then he goes and he gets rid of this independent vaccine board and puts on a bunch of bozos. And we reported on that guy. It was a while back, 3-4 months ago. But and I've said this before, so y'all probably know, or at least the people that have been with me for a while. My fiance, soon to be wife, she's a nurse practitioner, and we talked about it and went over the vaccine board and who he got rid of and then who he put in there. And I mean, these people are so underqualified. I mean, we're talking ER doctors. They're supposed to be going over molecular biology and the way vaccines, enter the body and deal with cells. And I mean, you need research. You need research medical personnel, people that know how to comb through the research, not somebody that knows how to stitch things up or somebody that's working in the ER that doesn't know what is it, epidemiology, or however you pronounce it. You don't need those people. You don't need people that are, I mean, you got a pediatrician, but these people they don't specialize in being able to read all the scientific studies and how the body breaks this down and how the body breaks that down. That's not their forte. So he brings in a whole bunch of people, and I think out of the initial 8 or 9 that he brought in, there was only one that was qualified to do the job he was bringing them in for. A bill that would restrict which restrooms transgender people can use in government buildings and schools is now headed to Governor Greg Abbott's desk after the Texas Senate on Wednesday agreed to increased penalties the House added to the proposal last week. Excuse me. House Representatives approved Senate Bill 8 on a 86-45 vote Thursday after several hours of tense discussion that was at times interrupted by people in the gallery shouting insults at lawmakers who supported the bill. The House gallery, where visitors can watch proceedings, was emptied out by staff and Department of Public Safety officers after the disruptions continued. SB 8 would restrict bathroom use in government-owned buildings, public schools, and universities based of sex assigned at birth and would not allow exceptions for transgender inmates housing in prisons and jails. It would also bar those assigned male at birth from accessing women's domestic violence shelters unless they are under 17 and the child of a woman also receiving services. Bathroom bills proposing civil or criminal penalties for entering restrooms not matching biological sex have been proposed in Texas for more than a decade, and 19 other states have successfully passed their own proposals. The Texas House, however, has largely failed to garner traction for bathroom bills after a tense battle over one proposal in 2017. The Texas Senate has passed 6 different bathroom bills since 2017. A last-minute amendment from Representative Steve Toth, I think it's a Republican from Conray, raised the proposed fines to $25,000 against institutions where violations occur and $125,000 for any subsequent violations. The raised penalties would make SB 8 the most financially punitive bathroom bill in the country. The amendment was adopted without debate. The Senate approved the increased penalties on Wednesday on an 18-8 vote and now awaits the governor's signature. Supporters of SB 8, which has also been called the Texas Women's Privacy Act, have said the bill is necessary to ensure safety and comfort for women in intimate spaces like changing rooms and bathrooms. So, y'all, this is kind of what I think on the whole thing. I agree with this new policy in idea. What I don't agree with is the dollar amount for fines. I think they are excessive. I think they violate the 8th Amendment of the Constitution, and y'all know how the Patriot Party is about the Constitution. It is our guiding light and moral compass. I also think it's a recipe for disaster that these punishments are made on someone's birth certificate sex, not ID. Because if someone has had the full surgery, so they have female anatomy, then it's probably best if they use the female bathroom. Not to mention the confusion of what I consider a punitive punishment. Just think, if they have a state ID that says they're a female and they have all female parts, realistically, how are you going to know? But yet, this leaves, somebody able to be fined 25, 125,000. I mean, I don't really, I like it in idea, but I don't like how aggressive and possibly unconstitutional these fines are. And I understand these biological men with men anatomy not going into female restroom. But if you are on all the hormones and you have had the full sex change and people don't know, this is just a recipe for disaster. As well as taking people with female parts and putting them in men's prisons. I mean, when you have the anatomy, you have the anatomy. I know, cellular, chromosome, you may not be, but to all intents purposes, you are a kind of a female when you've had the surgery and you're on all the um, blockers and hormones and everything that you take. So rising electric bills become a political problem for Trump and GOP. Now, I'm going to give you all the story, and then I kind of dove into this a little bit because I didn't understand it. And so hopefully I can help you all understand a little bit more that I don't even see this as a political issue. Rising power prices are becoming a political liability for Republicans as electricity costs outpace inflation. A recent Consumer Price Index report found that electricity prices were rising at double the rate of inflation. And the general public is probably going to start to take notice. In the last couple of years, different items that have gone up in price have become media concerns. And it's really the media driving this. They become very visible. People get very angry. So, electric bills are probably going to follow this. But, I looked into the why. And it does say that it's a politically charged economic paradox, because my whole thing was, well, heck, oil's going down, fuel should be going down, which that's kind of what produces electricity in my mind. So why is it going up? Well, this is why it's going up. Electricity prices are largely determined by regional supply and demand, infrastructure cost, and fuel mix, not global oil markets. Unlike gasoline, electricity is produced and consumed locally. So, one thing, we have exploding demand from AI and data centers. The rise of artificial intelligence has triggered a boom in data center constructions. These facilities consume up to 30 times more electricity than traditional ones. Utilities are scrambling to meet this demand, and the cost of upgrading the grid is being passed on to the consumer. This has nothing to do with politics. Aging infrastructure. Much of the U.S. power grid is decades old. Utilities are investing heavily to replace or modernize transmission lines, substations, and transformers. These capital costs are baked into your monthly bill. Natural gas pressures. Although oil prices are down, natural gas, which is used 40% of the time for U.S. electricity generation, is being exported at record levels. That means Americans are competing with global buyers, which drives up domestic prices. So we're paying more so we can deport or so we can export it. And I'm not liking that. I wanted to export it. I wanted to make money off of it, but not at the cost of the American citizens. And this is that common sense ridiculousness, the same kind of math that we have seen where, this administration comes out and says, well, we're going to drop drug prices by 700, 1200, 14, 1500%. And I said, you can't go under 100% or they're paying us. This is that same kind of math, but I still don't think it should be political, because you have these data centers, AIs, and the aging infrastructure. So this is really something that I think the media is pushing to and kind of grasping at straws, but they're gonna get a lot of traction, and I'm sure a lot of Americans are going to turn this political when I just don't see how this is political. Analysts estimate the U.S. added 75,000 jobs in July, which would be a slight improvement from the 73,000 in June. However, it would put the year-to-date total at 672,000, barring revisions, down from more than 1.1 million during the same period last year. The U.S. economy appears to have stagnated since July, analysts from Citi said in a note this week. They cited a separate survey from the Federal Reserve released Wednesday. They showed little to no increase in economic activity or employment over the past several weeks. The monthly jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics is closely watched by economists to provide a snapshot of the economy. This one will be especially scrutinized. It will be the first since President Donald Trump fired the agency head, Erica McInterfer, over accusations of releasing inaccurate data. It's a charge that mainstream economists have dismissed while raising grave concerns that McInterfer's dismissal risk politicizing a nonpartisan statistical agency. And we have talked about this. We're not done because we're going to go into when the report was released, but we have talked about this not being able to get accurate information. On one side, now I don't know if it goes into the labor statistics. I really believe it goes into the crime statistics, because on one side you got a change in the way things are reported to manipulate data. That's on the left side. Then on the right side, if it doesn't say what we want it to say, we're going to fire them and we're going to politicize it. So you got people scared to report the data. The data may or may not be true, and we just cannot get real numbers because everybody's working for the numbers to say what they want it to say. Numbers should not say what you want them to say. They should say what they are. Stop manipulating math. Then the report was released. The Labor Department on Friday said businesses added just 22,000 jobs in August, the fourth disappointing month report in a row. The June numbers were also revised down to show that the U.S. actually lost 13,000 jobs that month, the first time that has happened since December of 2020. Unemployment ticked up, the highest in 4 years, and in a further blow to President Donald Trump's manufacturers continued to shed jobs, with employment down by 78,000 this year, despite the administration's drive to promote investment and growth in that corner of the economy. The report comes as both elevated interest rates and Trump's sweeping tariffs weigh on an economy that depends on customer spending or consumer spending, same difference. For the first time since 2021, there are now more unemployed Americans than there are job openings, even as the president's immigration crackdown reduces the supply of workers. And this is in quotations. The impact of tariffs on hiring was undeniable, said Joseph Brusuelas, chief economist at RSM. So we got Trump, who fires this Erica McInterfer, the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, on August 1st, following a disappointing job report that showed only 73,000 non-farm jobs added in July, well below the expected 110,000. The report also included significant downward revisions for May and June, totaling 258,000 fewer jobs than previously reported. Trump announced the firing via Truth Social, alleging without evidence that McIntyre, or y'all know how I'm in names, but anyway, a Biden appointee had manipulated jobs data for political purposes. What is he going to say now? What is he going to say now? Now, there was no evidence there, but what is he going to say now that it comes out with 22,000 jobs? I mean, that's bad. That's bad. Now, our first story was about China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, these axes of evil is what I'm going to call them. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin, excuse me, warned on Friday that any Western forces deployed to Ukraine would be a legitimate target for Moscow's army, a day after Kyiv's allies said they had committed to a troop presence in the event of a peace deal. 24 countries led by France and Britain pledged Thursday to join a reassurance force on land, at sea, and in the air to patrol any agreement to end the conflict unleashed by Russia in February of 2022. You know, and here it goes again. We talk about misinformation. There was all these promises. Now, like I said, this could be Putin making Trump look bad. But just from past actions, I just feel like he's a braggart who brags about things that he doesn't have in the bag and then has to backstep or bites down and says it's not his, digs his feet in the mud and says it's not him, it's this person, and lays blame or tries to change the story in the media cycle. We were told how great that meeting went. Then they started unleashing worse attacks on Ukraine, some of the worst attacks that Ukraine's seen right after the meeting, kind of like spitting in the face of the U.S., spitting on Trump. And now they're saying if anybody comes in Ukraine, they are a legitimate target. Well, how can there be a target for a peace deal that was supposed to come into effect in early September? I just, if a meeting didn't go good, freaking say the meeting didn't go good. Don't get everybody's hopes up, and then the tablecloth get pulled out from under you, the rug gets pulled out from under you, and you've banked on the head of the free world on his word. You should be able to bank on the president of the United States' word. When he tells you that a tariff is going to be this much, that's how much the tariff should be. We shouldn't move the goalpost and push people into China's arms. If Putin says he doesn't want peace, then freaking come back and tell everybody the meeting didn't go good. Putin doesn't want peace. We're going to have to take steps in in another direction. Stop boosting yourself up and just doing this to energize your base. You're doing things to energize your base that literally don't pertain to anything. And we're going to report on something else, but I want to wait and see how the story plays out because it's a lot of people don't understand this executive order yet. So we're kind of going to report on something that plays right to what I was just saying when the full scope of this executive order comes out. And I'll just give you a little peek into it. This whole thing about changing the name of the DOD, the Department of Defense, which came up under a National Security Act back after World War II, to be able to bring all branches together under one secretary instead of having cabinet members for every branch in the administration, in the White House. So this and Trump saying, well, it went woke back after World War II and it needs to go back. Well, this is a lot of taxpayer expense for a change of name, and we're going to go into the ins and outs of it once this whole executive order rolls out and we see exactly what it's got to do. Because a lot of people are kind of talking about what they don't know about right now, and I'm not going to do that. But the whole thing is a lot of this stuff is to energize the base. But you're already elected. You're not going to be president again per the Constitution, even though you would like to be. Do your job. Stop trying to be a showboat, a TV celebrity, and Be the commander in chief of the free world. That's what I ask of you. Let's get on to some financial news. So the weak jobs data shook up the market. U.S. payrolls came in softer than expected for August, signaling a cooling labor market. This has investors betting on multiple interest rate cuts from the Federal Reserve before year end. While that might sound like good news for borrowers, it's also stoking fears that the economy could be slowing more than anticipated. Now, that's one thing Trump's wanted the interest rates down. I don't think he wanted them down at the expense of no jobs or raising unemployment, but he did want it down, and that may bring it down. Wall Street reacts. Major indexes dipped as traders shifted focus from rate cut optimism to concerns about economic cracks. Financial and energy stocks took a hit, while real estate shares, typically sensitive to interest rates, actually gained. Indiva stock plunges. Tech consultancy Indiva saw its stock drop over 30% this week after disappointing earnings and a weak forecast for fiscal 2026. Despite beating profit expectations, investors were spooked by falling free cash flow and a projected revenue decline. Let's get into tech. Tech for the week. Cena surges on AI-driven demand. Networking giant Cena saw its stock jump nearly 24% after crushing earnings expectations. The company's optical networking gear is in hot demand thanks to the explosion of AI and cloud computing. Revenue rose 29% year over year, and earnings nearly doubled, signaling a major shift from traditional telecom to high bandwidth data center connectivity. Military tech gets a boost. Eglin Air Force Base in Florida launched a new experiment called Falcon Peak, aimed at testing counter drone technologies. The goal is to detect and neutralize unmanned aerial systems. Think defense against rogue drones. The tests are running through mid-September and involve restricted zones around Santa Rosa Island. Celebrity news and gossip. Swizz Beatz shuts down Alicia Keys' divorce rumors. Grammy-winning producer Swizz Beatz responded to viral rumors that he and Alicia Keys were divorcing after alleged infidelity. A gossip YouTuber had claimed Swizz fathered a child outside their marriage, prompting speculation online. But Swizz clapped back with humor, posting a video of the couple dancing and joking. Everybody knew we was divorced but us, in quotations. He emphasized that the rumors were false and driven by negativity. Taylor Swift's engagement buzz. Taylor Swift was spotted at Brittany Mahomes' birthday bash in Nashville just days after announcing her engagement to NFL star Travis Kelce. Her ring designer even spoke out about the public's reaction to the diamond, calling it uplifting, in quotations. Chloe Grace Moretz ties the knot. Actress Chloe Grace Moretz quietly married model Kate Harrison over Labor Day weekend after 7 years together. The private ceremony was a surprise to fans, but celebrated widely online. Sports. NFL Week 1 drama unfolds. Micah Parsons, recently traded from the Cowboys to the Packers, is expected to make his debut despite nursing a back injury. He's been limited in practice, but is trending towards playing against the Detroit Lions this Sunday. The Steelers versus Jets matchup is heating up with bold predictions flying. Analysts expect Aaron Rodgers to throw for 30-plus yards, and the Steelers to rack up 4 sacks in a potential blowout win. Josh Allen, the Bills' star quarterback, announced a major endorsement deal with New Balance and pledged to fund youth sports in his hometown of Firebaugh, California, a heartfelt move ahead of Buffalo's game against the Ravens. New movies, streaming premieres, highest to lowest, Apple TV Plus. It's directed by Spike Lee and starring Denzel Washington. This thriller follows a music mogul caught in a moral dilemma when his son is kidnapped. It's inspired by Akira Kurosawa's High and Low and is streaming now. Trap, streaming on multiple platforms. M. Night Shyamalan's latest twist-filled thriller stars Josh Hartnett as a serial killer lured into an FBI sting at a pop concert. It's wild, weird, and very Shyamalan. Friendship, HBO Max, a quirky comedy starring Paul Rudd and Tim Robinson, likened to an adult Ferris Bueller. It's about a marketing exec whose life gets flipped by his eccentric neighbor. Task, HBO Max, a gritty crime drama starring Mark Ruffalo and Tom Pellephrey. Ruffalo plays an FBI agent chasing a mastermind behind a string of robberies. Premieres Sunday, September 7th. In theaters, The Naked Gun, a reboot of the classic comedy franchise starring Liam Neeson and Pamela Anderson. Expect a slapstick chaos and nostalgic laughs. The Housemaid is coming soon. Sydney Sweeney's psychological thriller based on Frida McFadden's best-selling novel has had its release date moved up to December 19th. That's a little ways away. New TV shows. New TV premieres. Task, HBO Max, a gritty crime drama. We just went over that. I guess it was in the movies too. The Paper, Peacock, a mockumentary style comedy from The Office showrunner Greg Daniels, set in a struggling Ohio newspaper, features Oscar Nunez, Dom Null Gleason, and Sabrina Impactor. All 10 episodes are streaming now. Wednesday, Season 2, Part 2, Netflix. The final 4 episodes of the hit series starring Jenna Ortega just dropped. Expect big twists, body swaps, and Tim Burton-directed chaos. The Runarounds, Prime Video. A new teen drama from the creators of Outer Banks following high school grads who form a rock band in North Carolina. All episodes are now available. The Great British Baking Show, Collection 13 on Netflix. Comfort TV at its finest. A new batch of bakers. Paul Hollywood's signature finger poke and a cozy vibe every Friday through November. And now we have Pick of the Week, or this week is technically Picks of the Week. We are picking Equalizer 1, 2, and 3. Denzel Washington plays a retired Marine and former intelligence operative turned vigilante for justice. This is a very good series. Denzel is a bad, bad boy in this series. Now, to all y'all out there, stay safe, and thank you for catching our Saturday morning show, where truth meets every corner of the news.